This particular client thought that building a team meant adding a headcount, and adding headcount is not building a team. What we had to figure out was, how do we define what a team is going to be? How do we grow the people that we have on this team before we go down the road of increasing expenses to add more team members?
Welcome to Season 3 of Conversations with Coaches. This is a stakeholder-centered coaching production where we believe everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. I'm Brandon Murgard, your host for the show. This season, we go deep into the case study library to discuss the real-life challenges of leaders and the coaches who help them succeed. As an added bonus, we're giving away the latest installment of our case study library, which includes case study summaries, show notes from each episode, and ways you can connect with the guest. Get your copy today at mgscc.net/case-studies. Got a chance to catch up with Catherine Cantey, a master coach with stakeholder-centered coaching, with a rich background in banking and development. In this episode, Catherine shares a compelling case study of a high-potential leader struggling with the concept of team building. Listen as Catherine shares her unique approach of focusing on developing people rather than increasing headcount, and how some patience, strategic leadership, and the right coaching process helped to double the business's revenue in just months. Join us and let's find out more about the client.
This is a very high potential leader in a very accelerated growth business that is in our area, and they are growing like gangbusters, doubling year over year in size. And to be able to do that, you've got young talent that's in here that's grown with the business, but we've got to be able to grow the minds at the same pace that we're growing the business in order for both to be sustainable.
So we have a high potential leader. It doesn't sound like there was any terminal behaviors that you were coming in to fix. It was really a developmental discussion that you were having, correct?
Yeah, when I came in, it really wasn't anything that was just going to be totally an overhaul. But there's little tendencies with leaders that sometimes the sponsors are like, I just don't have any time to deal with this. And if you could just fix this one or two small thing that is the equivalent of nails coming down a chalkboard to me, my life is going to be so much better. Not only am I going to give you this person, but I'm going to give you at least 6 more to work with. And that is where my time's being spent as a sponsor. And I need my time spent on strategic items, not on these little small things that are soaking up so much of my time.
Yeah. So this was, Catherine, come in, solve our biggest problems so that we can get on with our growth. Okay. So we've got this high potential leader. Biggest challenge is building a team. And was this articulated when the organization reached out to you, or is this something you uncovered through the feedback?
No, it was not shared with me in the beginning, exactly what we were going to do. They just said he just kind of gets on my nerves just a little bit, but he's a great person. We love him. We just need a little bit of tweaking. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, you'll figure it out. You're smart. And I said, okay, well then I'll figure it out. And so met with the leader and we followed the process. And as you know, we kind of kick off with a 360. And the 360 took us down a path. And I don't know how far down this path you want me to go, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Take us on a journey, Catherine. Tell us what you did.
All right. So met with the leader, had to build trust because you can't go in and be able to make small critiques to these phenomenal leaders without building up a little bit of trust. So we review what is stakeholder-centered coaching. I've got an onboarding process and we go through it and they ask questions. And they identify from one of the most worked on leadership skills. They identify what they think they need to be working on as the leader. In the same meeting, the sponsor's in there, and the sponsor's identifying, and they're circling, just like Chris Coffey used to have us do. Circle a couple of these items that you think you want to be able to wave a magic wand on and make better. And so I do that with the leader. I do it with the sponsor. I always love to see if they reconcile, because if they don't, that's our first opportunity. And usually they're like, oh gosh, he knew that I needed to work on this. And so we reconcile. From there, we go through this and we begin to talk about the cost benefit. We go through maybe a little bit of action planning just to kind of get them like primed up of like, this is the journey that we're going to be going on. From there, at the end of the meeting, we begin to talk about stakeholders. Like, who do you think is going to be a good stakeholder? And while we have the sponsor there, the sponsor is identifying and confirming, oh, this will be a great person and maybe not that one, but let's go ahead and confirm a couple of these stakeholders. From there, we grab these stakeholders, we get the contact information. I send out a simple 360 survey to be able to capture some client language, because we all know if we can capture the client language, we can, again, accelerate the results and not come in using terminology that maybe you or I would use, but we want to use the organization's terminology. We capture that through the 360, and I've shared this with the leader, a week or two down the road. So they're processing what they've learned. Now they're beginning to see what the 360 says. And I always disclose with the 360, you've got to promise me just a few things as the leader. First thing is, do not spend your time guessing who said what. Like, I know Brandon said this about me. I know Catherine said that about me. I said, guys, it's not about that. It's about the theme. So let's think about the theme. Is there something that is repeated 2, 3, 4 times in here that's maybe some low-hanging fruit that we can work on over the course of the next 6, 9, 12 months? And after I get them over that hurdle of, I know Brandon said this about me. I can't believe he said it. I said, well, is it a theme? They're like, no. I said, well, let's not waste our energy here. Let's go find what this theme is. And so we find the theme, and then we begin to talk about, does this reconcile to what you thought you needed to work on? Usually it does. And then we begin to finalize that cost benefit. We begin to finalize what this action plan is going to look like. What does success look like? I need you to describe, if you begin to do this really well, what does that success look like? Because we need to let other people know, our stakeholders know, what success is going to look like when we begin to accomplish it. And so we put that out there, and we begin our coaching cadence, where they begin to go meet with their stakeholders using the ask, listen, think, respond, change, follow-up process. It is awkward in the beginning. They're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I try to guide them back through it and say, guys, if we just hurry up and just ask these questions from day one, and we could just ask these questions. I'm working on building a team. Have you seen change or improve? Or have you seen improvement? Yes or no? And they say no, then that's great. We're that much closer to getting a yes. But if we don't ask these questions until halfway through the engagement, we just lost half the time during this process. So we need to start from day one. I'm working on building a better team. Have you seen improvement? Yes or no? Go ahead and accept what it is, because we want them to begin to recognize that we are working on this behavior going forward. And then we always ask for, what are 1 or 2 suggestions I can do to build a better team going forward? And that's the beginning of it. Once they capture that information, I need them to finish an after action assessment to be able to compile, what did you try this month? What did you learn? What insights did you gain? And what do you want to do differently going forward? And that is the kind of the overview framework of what we did with this particular leader. And we rinsed and we repeated. And we hit a couple bumps in the road, which is pretty typical. They always think it's going to be perfection. And, as a recovering perfectionist, we all know we just need to go for excellence. And we need to just continue to try again, and know that sustainability over the time this is going to work, and they're going to be able to get these results.
You're focusing on building a better team. And I had the pleasure of sitting in on your LinkedIn Live in around January 15th, I think it was, on your presentation was Build a Team in 45 Minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on Catherine's LinkedIn. You introduced some different perspectives on building a team. So can we start by saying what are the various perspectives around the definition of what it means to actually build a team?
Yeah, we need to get the stakeholders or the sponsors. We need to ask them, what do they define as the team? In this particular example, we're identifying that building a team did not mean you're going into a new market and you're just going to hire staff. You're not going to hire team members to build a team. So often when we're working with leaders, and they might be, mid-manager, they're trying to get into that C-suite, they really think that building a team is just adding one more person. That is not building a team. That's just adding expenses and adding headaches. So what we can do is identify, how do we define building a team? Make sure that we're in the same realm of definition with our manager, with our sponsors who have our back during these discussions. What do they think building a team is? And is that the same thing that we believe is building a team? And within that, we need to be able to identify, if we have a core set of people that we're managing, what are they doing well? And what are some things that they need to work on? And during How Do You Build a Team in 45 Minutes on LinkedIn, I go into an entire process of have your team sit down and kind of assess, what are they doing really well individually? What do you need them to do really well individually? And begin to identify how we can close that gap. That's one step of beginning to close that gap and beginning to build the team. Another aspect is, if we want to lead with kindness, if we want to lead with positive encouragement, we have to find something that they've done well lately, because we want to say, man, you really took hold of that issue that was in the office. And we've got to remember whatever that example was and use that as the North Star to continue to motivate them to think and reinforce a particular behavior that you want them to be able to reenact. And if it is something as simple as taking initiative, because that's going to help you build a stronger team, then find something small that they did, even if it was just fixing the ice maker in the office and you didn't have to do anything, then let's use that as the example going forward. Brandon, you did a great job fixing the ice maker in the office. I want you to own this next project like you fixed that ice maker in the office, like you owned it, you ran with it, and you made it happen. And maybe that was their gap of they needed to learn how to take initiative a little bit better. And that's how you're going to build your team. So find that North Star, give them that positive reinforcement of what they're doing well, and then continue to use that as just that guiding piece to refuel and to re-energize them along the way.
You talked a little bit about after-action reviews, after-action assessments. Can you tell us what those 4 questions are one more time, and then the importance that they had and the impact that they had in your coaching sessions?
Of course. So the questions are, what did you set out to do, or what was your goal? What happened? What did you learn from it? What insights did you gain? And then the last question is, what are you going to do differently going forward? These questions are so incredibly powerful for the leader. I call it forced reflection. You have to sit down and think about it. These are not questions that you could just answer 10 minutes before we jump on a call. If you were into this and you really do want to build that team, you've got to be able to sit down and have some quiet time just for even 20, 30 minutes and reflect upon what the conversations were that were shared with you from your stakeholders of what you are doing well and what you have tried, and be able to reflect on it. The magic happens when you reflect on this and you commit to what you want to do differently. Not only that, but as you commit to do something differently, let your stakeholders know through follow-up what you tried, what worked, what didn't work, because now you're bringing them along on the journey. And now we're going to be able to, again, accelerate these results.
And you use this tool in every coaching session, just to kind of review. Tell me how often you're using this.
Every single time. The folks that are getting the biggest results, and it takes a lot of courage, discipline, and humility, as you know, to be able to do this. The people, the leaders that are getting the biggest results, building the best teams, they meet every 2 weeks with their stakeholders. And these do not have to be lengthy conversations, but they meet every 2 weeks and they're able to gain these insights. And they are picking up 1% improvement every 2 weeks because they're learning how their stakeholders think. They're learning what the language is, and they're learning how they can take this and be able to just make small tweaks in their behavior, small tweaks in how to build a team. And over time, it is compounding the business. It is compounding the results that they're able to create within the organization.
Okay. How long was this engagement, and then how often did you meet for coaching on, say in a given month?
Yeah. So in this particular engagement with building a team, this particular leader went into a brand new market, de novo. So, I mean, that's pretty hard to do, to be able to go and start up a new branch of the business. And they did not have a heavy head count. Within 6 months, within 6 months, we had 2 positive mini surveys. They liked it so much, we picked it up for another 6 months. What we did is we meet every 2 weeks, so we meet twice a month to be able to review the stakeholder feedback and then the after-action assessment. We completed the mini survey that was at 90 days and then again at 6 months. Both of those, they were able to get a 2 or higher on the scale of -1 or -3 to +3. So substantial change. The manager was thrilled. They saw improvement. But not only that, the business, because the person thought that they had to hire additional headcount to be able to build a team, meant that he had to go out and do a little bit of selling, a little bit of business development. And as a result, they went from just having, $30 million of business to manage to $70 million within 9 months. Not only that, they were able to take their pipeline, which was, I think it was around 100 million. He got it up to 300 million for the pipeline. So he's got that in the pipeline for more business. And then he has options to add on other $50 million contracts on top, assuming that those initial pieces that he's built, those relationships that he built, continue to prosper, which at the rate he's going, is going to continue to happen. At this point, you now get to hire people because you've built the business, you've built the relationships, not only inside the business, but outside. And building a team can also mean that you've got to build relationships in your new territory, at the new branch, at the new office. And sometimes the stakeholder may not be within the business. It may be one of your customers or one of your prospects. And that's yet another way to be able to figure out what is important to people that are around you.
Yeah, it sounds like he's also done a great job solidifying the culture of touching bases with stakeholders, providing feed forward, sharing action plans. So bringing new people in as well is also going to be just exponentially easier now that he's done the legwork with you for 12 months. These results, as with all of the case studies I've discussed with you and your clients, Catherine, the results are on par for the norm, but they're astounding from a business perspective, how much growth has taken place. If we were to interview that leader, how much would he attribute this success to the coaching and what he learned and developed through working with you?
He is a self-motivated learner himself, so it's fun to work with him because not everybody wants to exchange book ideas or podcast or YouTube videos. And we were it's a great conversational relationship where we're just collaborating along the way. But he's doing a lot of this work himself, and I'm just a sounding board along the way. And he may just need somebody to bounce a few ideas off of. And at that point, he'll text me or email me in between. He knows what to do. Sometimes we just need that positive reinforcement. Also, he does take chances, he does make mistakes, and he does come back and he volunteers to be able to share them. And through that after-action review, because we've ingrained this process, he's coming already prepared to answer these types of questions. He'll share, I tried something and it didn't work, but this is what I'm going to do differently. He'll share it and he'll say, do you have any book recommendations, podcasts, or whatever I can continue to do to keep investing in myself? He's self-motivated. He's a high performer, and he's going to continue to do that. I'm just a guide that's helping him along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the exact role of a coach. Like, we want to work with people who already have these skill sets. They have the opportunities. They have the environment. They really just need the nudge. And you, Catherine, have acted as an amplifier to his success that's already proven, is already established in that business. My understanding of this is the skills that he applied and the way in which he applied them can largely be attributed back to you. I would be curious, to what degree he would blame all this success on the work that you've done. But having worked with, our 5,000 strong coach network, very largely when these type of disproportionate business results come up, very often those leaders look right back at the coach and say, this is your fault. I blame all this winning on you. And that's what this seems to be like. If we asked him what he learned, I think he'd say, I learned how to double my business. If we asked you what you learned from this engagement, what would you point at?
What I learned from interacting with him, that I, as a coach, need to trust my gut. And we had a really hard conversation midway. And I was on the fence whether or not I needed to have that conversation. And it's hard to kind of put yourself out there as a guide or as a coach and just say, this is not building a team. You're working, but you're not working the right way to be able to get the results. And I got to tell you something it's going to be a hard conversation. And I feel like we've built up enough trust along the way that you want me to share this information, but I'm a little apprehensive. So I need to know, is it okay for me to share this with you? And we had that meeting midway through the first engagement. And as somebody explained to me in a different engagement, sometimes it's like reading the book. And you read this book, and you got to get to this climax, and then the puzzle falls into place. And sometimes we've got to get to a part where we have built the trust up to where I can trust my gut and say, this is not going the direction that is best for me, for the leader, for the business. This is not going to be good, because in that instance, building a team did not mean adding more headcount and calling HR and hiring more people. That was not what we needed. And so having that meeting and being able to trust my gut and put it out there and say, this is not working. Like, we need to have a hard conversation. And we did. And he was upset about it. He did not like the conversation. And I remember where I was sitting. I remember I was looking out this window at my house, and it was 5:30. And he said, I got to go because it's my kids playing football. And I was like, oh, stabbed in my heart. Like, I just feel like I ruined this guy. And I gave him a couple days. I let the sponsor know. I said, look, I had a hard conversation. And the sponsor said, that's exactly why I hired you. I've been saying the exact same thing, and I needed somebody else to be able to do this. And I was like, oh, okay, he's not going to fire me, so that's good. And then 2 days go by. He came back, and he said, yeah, I needed to hear it. I was upset in the moment, but I needed to hear it. At the end of the engagement, he reported out, and he's laughing about it, 3 months later. He's like, yeah, I needed to hear it. I was just had a hard head about what I needed to do. And Catherine was able to just put it out there for me in layman's terms of what we needed to really make the impact that he was there to be able to do with that business. So we joke about it now, but what I learned from it was trust my gut, know that if it's not going right, I do need to speak up because I need to be able to support them. They expect that from me.
Yeah, so being willing to lean into those hard conversations is crucial as a coach. What else did you learn?
Just the consistency. Consistency is definitely going to continue to win in the long run. The conversations, the repetition over and over again, reinforcing the framework, ask, listen, think, respond, change, follow up. Like, we use this consistently over and over and over again, at least twice a month with all the stakeholders. And when you use this framework consistently over time, and you have patience with it and tons of patience with it, because sometimes they don't get to meet with all the stakeholders because stuff happens. But reinforcing the importance of having these conversations and reinforcing this cadence of, we are going to meet, we are going to talk about this good stuff, and I need you to do the homework, I need you to do the reflection. That is extremely important. That after action review, every single time we meet, every single time, whether they had all their homework done or not, I need to know, what are you going to do differently going forward based off of what we just talked about on this phone call?
Absolutely. I'm neck deep in the research on kind of what the active ingredients are that drive the outcome of coaching. And across all coaching methodologies, across all leadership development processes, across self-development or organizational development initiatives, the absolute unquestioned king that connects your activities to perception changes of your leadership effectiveness is the follow-up. And the more frequently you're seen doing that, we don't have a precise number, but qualitatively, it's the word consistently and frequently. That has a very, very, an astronomically strong linkage to the conclusion of how people perceive you as a leader. So Catherine, you're absolutely right. If anyone at home is interested to look more into that research, I'd recommend Leadership as a Contact Sport in 2004 and 2015, as early as Elizabeth Thatch put out a paper in 2002 worth checking out. You can find that on Google Scholar. Catherine, I've heard you speak about the sponsors as well. The sponsors brought you in, very trusting. They've even said, hey, you figure out what the problem is. We know that you've got this. What role did they play in the success, would you say?
The engagements are going to be successful when the sponsors have everybody's back. And when you have an engaged sponsor, they do not necessarily need to be meeting with us on a regular cadence. But what we do need is their support. We need to know that they're going to be there, that when I'm going to have a hard conversation, that they have me 110% for what I've got to be able to deliver. Even I'm in an engagement right now. I'm like, this one, just sometimes over time, we just get a little off course and we just got to rein it back in. And it's common, we're humans. It's just things are going to happen in our life, and we're just not going to be able to get up and go to the gym every single day. So we need to course correct. And as we course correct, we've got to have a strong sponsor there to have our back when we got to have the conversation to say, consistency is extremely important. Follow-up is extremely important. Being able to be able to reach out to your stakeholders on a regular basis is very important. And when the sponsor has our back, to be able to say, yeah, that's what I need you to do. I need you to follow the stakeholder center process. We know it works when we follow this process. And when the sponsor says, this is what we're going to do, man, the game changes, and all the dominoes fall into place, and it's beautiful.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to wrap with you actually bringing all of us into one of your after action reviews. So what did we set out to do? We set out to build a team in this organization of the well-loved, well-respected leader. What we did, you've walked us through: ask, listen, think, respond, change, follow up. We've done our after action reviews. We've done our mini surveys. We talked about what we learned. What can we as coaches, we as leaders, and we just as people, what can we do differently in our lives, in our own development, based on your learnings from this engagement?
Yeah, 3 things come to mind, Brandon. The first one is ask, don't tell. And I think this is something that Marshall and you, I've heard lots of great leaders talk about it, is working with other leaders, with sponsors, with the stakeholders around us. We really do need to lead with questions and not lead with directives. When we ask questions, it helps the adults. This is my definition, but it helps the adults get on board. It helps them be able to come up with the answer that they already know that they need to do. So when we lead with questions, it just accelerates the results. Reinforcing the good, as I talked about earlier with Ice Maker, somebody does something small around the office and it is game changer because they took initiative, and you want them to take more initiative all the time because it's going to allow you to have a stronger team. If you've got half a dozen people that just take initiative and get stuff done, then reinforce that good. Find that one small thing that they were good at, even from day one. If that's all that they've got, keep reinforcing it. Use that as the North Star to continue to reinforce the behavior you want to see. And then finally, we want to be able to create accountability with one another. With our team, we want to be able to mutually agree upon whatever it is that we're going to both agree. Send me the TPS report by 5:00 on Friday and make sure that we both agree on it. Create this accountability. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, I'm going to throw a bonus out there, which is the follow-up. Follow up all the time. And that is where the magic is going to begin to happen.
Beautiful. Did you just subtly quote Office Space?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one dating myself. Wonderful. One of my all-time favorite movies, by the way. Beautiful. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it, absolutely go and take a peek. Good. So it's to ask, listen, think, respond, change, follow up. Ask people, don't tell them. It is to reinforce the good and then to follow up. In asking, do you have any guidelines or prescriptions, rules for how we can effectively ask? Any templates or phrases we can borrow?
I like to think, how simple can we ask the question? People are so busy. They've got their cell phones. They've got their laptops. They've got people coming and going. Their desk is covered in paper. Make it easy on the person that you're asking the question. Use as few words as possible. So when I ask a question, I'm working on building a team. Have you seen improvement? Yes or no? I've got some leaders, they love to have like this whole script that's a paragraph. I say, guys, nobody's going to listen to that. Just say, I'm working on building a team. What are 1 or 2 suggestions I can do going forward? Leave it at that. Let's not talk about, well, I thought about I might try this. And then yesterday at lunch, I had a good lunch. But then I started thinking about building my team. And then I started thinking about what the waitress was doing. So do you have any ideas on what I can do to build my team? Y'all, it's just not going to work. So we've got to ask very clear, concise questions. I'm building a team. What are 1 or 2 suggestions I can use from you going forward to help?
Beautiful. And for reinforcing the good, your recommendation is, as a leader or as a coach working with a leader, it sounded like you drew up a matrix with stakeholders on one axis, and then areas that you can reinforce their personal initiative or whatever it is that they've done to reinforce the good. Is that something that you do weekly or monthly, or how do you process that?
That came out of the result of a coaching call. And then what I'm learning from one client, I usually go and apply to another client is what happens. And so the example you're talking about is you could list your team names down the left side of the axis. And at the top, write down 3 things that each person does really well. Write down 1 thing you think they need to improve on, and begin to look at what those themes are on that chart and begin to close the gap. Maybe somebody's really strong at one piece and they're not so strong at another. Could one of these other team members be a great mentor, a great, coach to them and share about how fantastic, Joe is at building a team? And so, Mary, can you and Joe go to lunch and just be able to talk about some of the best team building activities that you had? And then while you're at lunch, Mary, you're fantastic at project management. Can you teach Joe some things about project management? And get them talking and get them to cross collaborate, because what one person's weaknesses could be somebody else's strength. And when we cross collaborate, we can grow that team even more without adding headcount.
Good. And then follow up. This is probably the most important advice you're going to give us today. How do you provide accountability for leaders to ensure that follow up is taking place every 2 to 4 weeks without fail?
Yeah. So sometimes the leaders, they just feel a little awkward. They're like, oh, I don't want to tell everybody what I'm doing. It sounds like I'm bragging. And I like to tell them that you get a hall pass. You get a Catherine Cantey hall pass, and you get to just, if you feel awkward doing it, then you get a hall pass and you get to say, Catherine and I were working on this investment on my stakeholder center coaching. And this is what I'm learning. And I'm trying what you're saying. I've reflected on it, and this is what's happened as a result. And be able to share the story that way. And if it feels awkward, then just lead with, hey, Catherine gave me a hall pass and said I need to start sharing some of this stuff with you. Another thing is something that I used to do with my CEOs is I'd send them an email that just said good news. I did not send them this email very often, but in the subject line, it said good news. And I would very briefly, 2-3 sentences, just talk about something good that somebody else did. And maybe we just closed a great deal. Maybe the operations was able to set something up for success for a client. And I just want to congratulate and highlight the fact that Brandon really delivered a great result. And I put good news in the subject line. That's another way to kind of push forward the work that's going on. What I found in corporate was the CEOs only get problems. They don't get to hear all the good stuff. Every single time I sent a good news email, they pinged me right back. They were like, thank you. All I've heard today was nothing but complaints. And I finally have something that went right. And, you don't do it very often, but you can just send out a good news email, let people know that it's all, things are being taken care of and there's some good stuff taking on. That's another form of follow-up.
Beautiful. Well, I certainly would like to build more effective teams, and I've yet to meet an executive who says, hey, my teams, they're exactly where they need to be, no change needed. If I'm an executive sitting out there looking to build a team and I want to give some of this a try, how would I get in touch with you, follow your story, reach out?
Thank you for asking. CatherineCantey.com is my website. You can schedule a complimentary call there. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn, and I have a YouTube channel. All of that information is under Catherine Cantey with the starting with the letter C.
Perfect. And I shouldn't plug it, but I'm going to. Your LinkedIn Live from January 15th, titled Build a Team in 45 Minutes, is definitely worth checking out, ladies and gentlemen.
Catherine Cantey's insightful journey with a high potential leader, demonstrates how we can conquer challenges and turn them into remarkable growth through stakeholder-centered team development. Catherine's story is a testament to the power of patient, focused coaching and its impact on both personal and business success. We hope you're leaving today inspired to think differently about team building and leadership. Remember, all of the case studies and show notes of the season are available for download at mgscc.net/case-studies. The link can also be found in the episode description. And if you'd like to have a better understanding of the foundations of leveraging stakeholders and measuring results in your coaching, then join the free training program, Foundations of Stakeholder-Centered Coaching, where we share the philosophies and frameworks that guarantee improved leadership effectiveness in 12 months or less. You can register for the free course at mgscc.net/foundations-course. Until next time, this has been another episode of Conversations with Coaches by Stakeholder-Centered Coaching, where we believe everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. Thank you for joining the conversation, and stay tuned for more stories of leadership transformation.